Welcome to B2B in the Black's digital fireside chats. I'm your host, Khalow, co-founder of this amazing group of movement. Now, without further ado, I'd like to welcome you to our esteemed luminaries from PetDesk, the VP of Finance and Operations, Steve Wolkenstein. And in addition, his counterpart, the VP of Brand Experience, Christine Gately-Evans.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having us.
Fantastic. Well, the title of this session is just so topical and so timely. I love it. Working together to put focus on business strategy and align decisions short-term for long-term business health. It's just, I can't imagine a more appropriate title. And before we dive into that amazing topic, I'd love for the two of you to help me set the stage. Maybe just give me a little background in terms of what PetDesk does and its ultimate mission, and whether you're focused on revenue or profit as an organization, and then a little bit more about your individual roles and how you really help to support the business. And then we'll dive into that timely topic. Steve, do you mind starting us off?
No, PetDesk is really in the industry to take care of pets. That's why we're here. That's our mission. That's our focus. We're here to get 10 million lives, 10 million years of additional pet lives through our software, through our creative processes, and through our efforts to help veterinarians and their pet parents. So that's really the mission statement of PetDesk. My role as the VP Finance is to really help the rest of the executives and the rest of the company, for that matter, really go about that process to go build the tools that we need, build the processes that we need, get the people on board that we need to make that driven, to make that process really something that can happen and happen efficiently and effectively, and really take care of the pets and our employees at the end of the day.
That's a big, bold vision. I love it. And something that I think that I'm sure can generate a tremendous amount of purpose through your organization. Christine, let's talk a little about you. What are you doing within PetDesk?
Well, it's funny, Thad, you asked if we are driving revenue or profit, and Steve hit the nail on the head. And, we're here to extend the lives of pets. We have 3 laws at PetDesk, and that's the first and foremost law. The second law is to improve the lives of our care providers, as long as that doesn't conflict with the first law. And the third law is really about keeping our employees content, as long as that doesn't conflict with the second or first law. So, what Steve walked us through is the drive behind the company, and it really is at the core of what we do. And in the role of brand experience, we touch everything. And I think creating experiences that make that possible to really focus on extending the pets' lives is what's unique about PetDesk. So we are a purpose-driven organization. Our values are also sit at the core of what we do and how we make decisions with the company. But, at the end of the day, if we can all align on that first law, then we're doing right by the business.
I love it. And it's so refreshing to hear a company that is so purpose-driven and understanding what they're ultimately delivering beyond growth and profitability. That's just fantastic, especially specifically in this day and age, in this very moment in time, right? And you mentioned the 3 laws of PetDesk, and I think that helps to set the stage. And you also mentioned this surface, this topic, this conversation again to remind our viewers, working together to put focus on business strategy and align decisions short-term for long-term business health, right? The notion of alignment seems critical there. And, I guess my question to the both of you is, why is alignment so critical to PetDesk at this moment in time?
I'll go first. I think alignment is critical because if you're not all going on the same path, you're never going to get there. I think there's a notion of everybody can work in their little silos and everybody just does their daily jobs and the company's going to just move forward. And I think that's really far from the truth. I think you need to all be marching to the same drummer. You all need to be marching down the same path, same goal. And I think that stems from our company's passion. Our employees are the most passionate group of folks I've ever been across and had the privilege to work with. They wake up every morning, from the customer success team to the Christine's marketing team to the product engineering. They wake up daily with a task of, how do I get our pets better? How do I get our products better? How do I make our customer service better? It's that passion that we all have truly taken on to ourselves, that we all preach. And it's voluntary. It's, totally accepted from the heart. And I think that's really what helped drives the ability to collaborate between departments.
Yeah, and I think I'll add to what Steve said, and having common goals is always a starting point, right? Shared KPIs, but having the ability to have those frank conversations, have the difficult conversations, but also at the end of the day, agree on what we're all there to do makes things a lot easier.
Absolutely. And it gives you that autonomy, right? Which I think so many of us desire in the roles that we have to make decisions and move things forward, which is fantastic, especially with such a purpose-driven organization. And I know, Christine, as we set up this conversation, we talked about this framework to make these decisions for the short term, right? In evaluating data and being agile. Can you help us to understand what this framework looks like and how you began to use this to make easy decisions, tough decisions, and really help us to understand, how you A, brought this together, and B, how it actually works in practice?
Right. So it was interesting as we all, hit the middle of March, and we were actually at a company offsite when this all this news came out, and made the decision to immediately look at what the business needed to do as a result, what was going on externally with a lot of the factors with COVID-19. And while we had our 3 laws of PetDesk and we had our core values as a company, those 2 things can help guide a lot, but with such a strong force externally, we needed to look at, what's our COVID-19 rubric? How were we going to pivot so quickly by looking at the data, by being agile and flexible? And there were kind of four key things that came up. One was, what were the business indicators? What were our opportunities created, accounts won, upsell, churn, the core business indicators. And then what were our business trends? So what was happening in the vet industry and our clinics, and what data could we quickly assess and understand to help drive that decisioning? And then what would we need from a business modeling standpoint in order to align decisioning and get quickly into a place where we could re-pivot and look at what we'd be doing over the next, the coming months, 60, 90, 120 days.
So that sounds really smart, right? And good for you to be able to take something on so quickly and come up with a formula for reevaluation, I guess. Can you help folks who are tuning into this understand what this looks like in practice? Like what a decision, big or small, could look like in the realm of this framework?
Sure. Being in a SaaS company, you're driven by data. So first and foremost, get every single piece of data on the table and in conversations that can help inform decisioning was the place to, definitely that we started. And I think, Steve, the first conversations we had were really rooted in what right now are the current financial situations of money coming in, money going out, and how can we reevaluate? And I'll let him expand on that a little bit, because I think it's the place you start is the data. Financials being one of those data sources, right?
Absolutely. And from our perspective, what we did is we looked at cash in, cash burn. There's certain things you can control and certain things you can't control. I can't control 100% whether customer churns or not, but I can certainly control what my burn is. Whether that's certain products, certain features, certain, things that we may or may not need 100% of the time. So we certainly control that. So we did a lot of, right off the bat, mid-March to end of March, of really trying to figure out what could we do or what couldn't we do? What could we modify? What couldn't we modify? And we came up with a large list of things that, yes, we really had control of what we could cut if we had to. And what we wanted to expand if we wanted to, because we think there's some opportunities here in this market at the same time. And I think, as Christine mentioned, talking about data, we spent a lot of time on data, looking at, churn rates, new customer win rates, new customer upsell opportunities, lots of things that, SaaS businesses look at to figure out where we're looking at. And a lot of that was industry backed. Veterinarians are it's in a business that is allowed for business. So it's not something that had to close down. So from that perspective, we really had to see where they were going. What was the industry going to look like? post-COVID, in the middle of COVID, and really see what the impact was. And we spent a good 30 to 45 days really thinking about that. And at the same time, our product engineering team were saying, what can we do to help? How can we help our customers? How can we help our pet parents? And how can we help our pets? And we came up with some products that we could roll out really quickly. We came up with a two-way messaging platform. We came out with a video chat, things that really help veterinarians and their parents and their pet patients really talk and communicate in a safe method under this time.
Wow. I mean, if you think about what you just mentioned to both of you, I mean, just a tremendous amount of flexibility and agility in such a short period of time. And there's a couple of things I'd like to jump on. And the first one actually is this notion of shifting from growth to a different metric, whatever it may be, and it sounds like you had a couple in terms of churn, as I understand it, became a more important metric. But I'll start with you, Steve, and then maybe we could evolve with Christine, is to understand that within a growth-oriented company like PetDesk, who's venture-backed and frankly is so growth-driven, right? What did those conversations, what was the tone of the conversation? What were some of the emotional responses when you first had to make those pivots? Was that a tough thing for your investors, for someone like yourself, Steve, in a finance role, yourself, Christine, in a marketing role, or was it natural? And you clearly saw the writing on the wall and things had to change. I'm always interested in that moment where I know startups are under such pressure to continue to outpace themselves, and all of a sudden the brakes may have been put on.
Yeah, certainly we're blessed by having a wonderful, VC back. Peakspan is a great investor. They share our passion for what we're doing and why we're doing it. So we never really had an outward pressure to say, hey, keep the pedal to the metal and let's keep growing it, 30, 40, 50%. That's not what they were trying to push us to do. We came back with them with here's what we think we need to do. Here's how we're going to approach it, effective immediately. Our current customer growth was not going to have the same impact just because customers were hunkering down and they're not going to go spend more money on things when they don't know how their business is going to react. So we completely pivoted to new sales to churn. And how do we prevent churn? How do we keep the customers we have? And not only keep them, how do we keep them happy, make sure that they're successful, and how do they continue to have their practice be successful and grow? Because at the end of the day, if their practices grow and they're successful, then we'll be growth, we'll grow and we'll be successful. So I think we were very lucky to have a group around us, both from the executive team as well as our outside investors, that were very understanding and very happy to help us and totally understood to allow us to, kind of pivot quickly.
Wow. They sound pretty reasonable. Christine, your job sounds easy. No.
Steve makes it easy.
There you go.
No, I think what Steve touched on is, pivoting the organization to retention was done at a time when health and safety was paramount, and the two tools or two platform extensions that we released really are services that facilitate telemedicine. And in a time when clinics were trying to facilitate distancing and, adhering to guidelines by the associations and the CDC, it was about being able to extend care in a way that we hadn't been able to before with both two-way messaging and video chat. So, at the heart of what we do, those two things to garner retention from customers and being able to facilitate experiences we couldn't before really was invigorating for the team and helped us really focus. So, we've heard a lot of employees say it was really helpful to have such a focused team during this time when there was a lot of volatility and a lot of change happening externally. It helped us, internally focus on what we need to accomplish.
That's amazing. And I got to know, was this something on the roadmap, or did we just realize in this moment in time we had to build it? Because that's an incredible pivot. And as I understand it, Christine, not only were you able to ideate this, you were able to get it out in fairly short order, a very quality product in such a short period of time. So were we thinking about this, or did we really have just an unbelievable turn?
So two-way messaging was launched in December of last year, and it helping facilitate health reminders and some of the backbone of our reminder system is really where that came into the roadmap. our video chat product was not on the roadmap. Our product and engineering team absolutely focused, worked day and night, and launched a beta program within weeks of actually having made the decision to go to market, which doesn't happen. I mean, you know, in software circles, that's unheard of, unprecedented, right?
Unreal.
So unprecedented development, engineering, and product focus was something that was paramount to the team, and getting that to market quickly so we could help was really what enabled that to happen so quickly.
Wow.
And
that is pretty amazing.
What Christine mentioned, I think not only was it done quickly, but the attitude and the invigoration of the teams to really sink their teeth into it and just dive in head first. You know, I use the analogy of there's a pool and I'm diving. The assumption is there's water in the pool. You know, our group just completely did that. And, you know, to a person, there wasn't a person on the team that wasn't 150% vested in the product, the outcome, you know, all the way from development to beta testing to alpha to, you know, go live to the sales team to Christine's marketing side. It's just one of those things. So from my side, it was a pleasure to watch everybody just have the same focus and drive to get this thing out as soon as it can, because we knew what the value it could be.
Yeah, and it seems to be a common theme there at PetDesk, which is this notion of alignment and focus. And I think there's probably a whole session to unleash alignment and focus, which I love, especially in today's world. You know, and the other thing I've learned in going through some of the notes and conversations we've had is this notion. You know, obviously there's a tremendous amount of change in business, and this need to withstand turbulence, I think were the words that were used. You know, Steve, as you think about that turbulence, what kind of advice would you give marketers out there in terms of the vernacular or cases they need to make to someone like yourself to talk about, you know, shifting from growth to churn, or lifetime value, or how to make investments? You know, we'll talk about investments in a moment. But when you are looking for a marketer, frankly, anyone within the organization to do and make the case for investment, what are you looking for, and especially in a moment of turbulence?
I think the first thing I'm looking for is honesty. I think, you know, being on the finance side and dealing with a lot of people in my prior lives, I'm not sure I always got the honest picture. And I think that's one of the things that we, you know, as a company, we really promote is I need the honest truth. And I think our transparency concept and our willingness to be that way, I think is extremely invigorating and helpful. So when Christine comes to me and says, hey, we've got to spend X to do Y, Z, and A, B, and C, and we have about 25 minutes to say yes or no to make it happen. You know, I think, you know, there's a trust factor built up because I know she's telling me the truth, and, you know, there's an experience level there that I can be comfortable in. Once we walk through the metrics of the program, what's the goals and what do we think it's going to produce, then, you know, there's a simple answer to say either yes we can or no we can't.
I like Steve's comment about 25 minutes because we don't have meetings that are over 23 minutes for that reason.
One theme I saw throughout, which was like speed and efficiency, right? And having to I'm guessing that's just part of the culture of decision making at the executive level that's pushed down, or is it?
I think it is. I mean, I think there's a standard adage that if you're going to fail fast. And I think we certainly, you know, accept that option. And I mean, I think we try to do that where, you know, we're willing to try anything once, but let's try it quickly. You know, analysis, you know, by paralysis, you just don't get anything done. That doesn't really help. So we'll come together as a group, make a decision as a group, and go. And if it doesn't work, then we'll change our minds and do something different.
I love it. Christine, all right, this is going too well. This is you guys seem like you've been best buds for decades, right? Like you went to college together or something. Where was the friction? I mean, obviously in times of change, there's going to be friction, right? And conversations, differing opinions, emotional responses to data coming in, which sounds like you're a very data-driven company. You know, where did you see friction in decision-making in the lens with which you applied this rubric, and how did you surmount that?
Yeah, I think the friction I would say in our organization is different than other organizations that I've been at. And, you know, Steve and I are both very passionate about what we do. We're both very good at what we do. And, you know, when we can have a conversation and, you know, whether or not we like what we're having a conversation about, if we can agree that there's X risk or X reward and align on that and walk away with an agreement to that, that's extremely satisfying and takes some of the friction out of it. So, the emotional part of decision making, at this point, I think, especially in our organization, people are passionate about what they do, but it's not confused with personal friction or personal purpose, right? If it's done in, for the right reasons to drive the right goals for the company, we all fall in line quickly and decisions aren't taken personally, and it really is for the betterment of the company. And for that reason, there's less friction there.
So it sounds like alignment around the facts, right? Risk and reward, you're weighing, upside and downside, and everyone's agreeing to that. But the decision itself could, you both could come in to completely different decisions, but that's the way you were able to smooth out any level of potential friction going forward, is alignment around facts.
I would
Absolutely.
add, it's alignment around facts, but it's also an understanding that each of us comes at different issues from different angles, and we bring different viewpoints and things like that. I think, we certainly have a company philosophy of openness and challenging each other. There's people in the room going, well, I'm just going to take the other side so we can have that discussion. So we can, flesh out concepts and flesh out ideas. So I think there's always an approach of, we want your opinion. At the end of the day, we'll come up to a decision. And then once that decision's done, then we all get behind it and we move forward. So I do think, of course, there's going to be friction. I think to say that there isn't friction would be a fallacy. But it's how you handle friction. And I think we're all, at the executive team and even the entire company, conflict is not necessarily a bad thing. Conflict can be a very good thing.
Yep.
Because it allows ideas to really get pushed through.
Yeah, with friction, there's change. Warren Buffett has this saying, essentially, that when times are fat, you save, and when times are thin, you spend. And we'll start with you maybe, Steve, in thinking about that philosophy for investment, specifically in marketing, right? Let's talk about that, because you're going to have marketers on, dialed into this. And then, I've got a few questions for you as well, Christine, but do you believe, first of all, do you believe in that? And second of all, is that something that you're willing to put in practice when it's difficult? Because this is a difficult time to spend money, right?
Yeah, I've heard the quote before, and I tend to agree with what he's saying. I think there's times, when that's a good idea, and times when it's not a good idea. When this first happened, say mid-March, I think we just kind of hunkered down and said, hey, let's spend 30 to 45 days really thinking about what we're going to do. So we pretty much put a freeze on expenses. And we just said, hey, we're just going to stop. Let's think about how this is going. Where's the market taking us? What's the industry going to take us? How are clinics acting? So I would say within 30 days, we kind of saw a lay of the land of how things were going. And at that point, we made some decisions. I know Christy and I had some calls and some virtual Zoom meetings where we talked about some programs that we wanted to put in place, whether one was for Pardot, one was for another, tool that we use. So there's certainly some things that we did spend money on because there was a business purpose. There was a return on it that we thought was going to take place. And we thought it was the right amount of spending. And we were lucky enough that we weren't impacted as much as a lot of other industries and customers and things like that we could spend a few bucks here and there.
Christine, did you go back to make the case on a number of fronts for spending, or are we? Yeah.
Yeah. So we're, like Steve said, without knowing how far we could walk before the cliff dropped, there were a lot of unknowns going into this. And if there's not a healthy business left, we can't do what we're there to do. So first and foremost, I think, having frank conversations about keeping the business health while moving some spend around that needed to get in market to provide, support for these new innovations. That was some of the stuff we kept in market. The, bigger awareness building spend, we still have a lot more time under the under the current climate to, have further conversations. We're going into planning conversations this week on how we can sustain business and get back to growth from a health perspective in a healthy way. And I'm advocating absolutely that for the right time, for the right return on investment, that we do have those spends in market, but they need to be smarter. Right now is not the time to take huge business risk because of the situation, the volatile situation we're still in.
In fact, I'll
So
say right now, there's I have 2 emails from Christine asking for a couple spend items. So we'll be having those conversations very shortly.
Hey, can we close the deal right here? I'd love to be a facilitator of deal making. This would be great. You to be in the black. I love it. Christine, let's pivot for a second. Let's talk about churn, because I think I was just on the phone with a CMO of a large tech company just 2 days ago. And his comment right out of the gate was, grow churn or eliminating churn or retention. Retention is the new growth, right? In terms of like everyone's focus right now. So as you're thinking about that, and since we're talking to a group of folks in finance and marketing, number one, I'd love to understand just general philosophy for how you're trying to retain clients, what type of data you're looking at, what type of campaigns you're launching, and number two, what types of investments you're making, and what you expect to get in return for those investments.
Sure. And some of that modeling is continuing as we're speaking. But I think, as you talk about retention as the new growth, holding on to your current client base and creating an all-in-one resource where they don't have to call multiple partners is the way that we've really looked at expanding that, affinity or brand affinity that our customers have with us. We're really, really fortunate. We have a very strong relationship with our clients. You can manage, in the business of communication software, we're an important tool for them. And as you look at that importance, being able to grow the capabilities of that platform and provide them for, one place to get all of their communication needs met, there are other innovations we can make to make their lives easier, to extend the care that we know can get more pets to vets and extend the life of pets, and ultimately deliver a superior product than a lot of our competitors. And as we look at the ROI on what we need to spend in market to get that awareness, because we know that audience, it is an extremely efficient spend, whether that's on Pardot and using marketing automation, whether that's on surrounding it with a white paper or thought leadership on a particular advancement in technology that can help their business further. Those are all content marketing plays coupled with marketing automation that typically have a high ROI. And when you think about net new, when you get back to growth, that's where it starts to get interesting on how you can start sprinkling that in with retention to grow your current base and to get that pipeline moving again.
Well, it sounds like, you did 2 birds with 1 stone, which is not only focus on retention, but retention with upsell, right? So some ability to continue to grow their overall share of wallet, which is great. Are there any particular metrics, Steve, that you look for when we're shifting this COVID?
Yeah, if you look at, just overall statistics, it's churn rates, upsell rates, what percentage of your clients are, upselling each, by product, churn, what's your average life of a customer? Is that growing or, decreasing depending upon how your churn is going? I do think, from a SaaS business perspective, churn is everything. I don't think you can ever underestimate the value of a low churn rate. I think it's in a lot of places, in a lot of ways, it's just as important as your MRR or ARR growth, because it's, as your customer acquisition cost is much larger on a new than it is on the keep a current. So from that perspective, the marketing dollars, things like that, to the extent it's helping with upsell, that, customer acquisition costs or CAC really allows that spend to be, to me to say, yeah, let's make that spend because we're really going to increase some things. So it's your CAC cost, it's your churn rates, then it's your upsell rates by product. And then it's like the other one I probably would go with your average sales price per customer. So what percentage of the add-ons do they have on a customer by customer basis?
I love it. And Christine, are you typically looking for the inside, the account team for that type of growth, or is it a combination of the account team and marketing to open up that revenue stream?
Yeah, our counterparts in our AE group are extremely strong. I think, as we look to bring in net new conversations of what PetDesk can do for their business, those conversations and aligning to the, key messaging of what's really important to them, but also important to the key differentiators of PetDesk is, some of that complement of how we partner with that group to really improve conversion and get that pipeline moving.
Makes sense. So I'm going to turn to the notion of greatest learnings, advice, and predictions. So we'll start with greatest learnings. Through this crazy period of time we're living in, I think the last conversation I was having, like the only other thing I think we could add on to the situation with a global pandemic, a global meltdown, incredible social unrest is a war, right? And hopefully we're not anywhere close to that. But what has been your greatest learning over this very short period of time? It seems like it's been years, right? But it's really only been a handful of months. Either one of you.
I'll start. I think, as we all move to work from home and as we all have numerous velocities of change, both in our, work environment, but also professional environment, our home environment, the health and safety of our employees is really important. And whether that's, making time for a 15-minute conversation that's not work-related off Zoom on your phone as you're, out walking the dog, that goes a long way to, making sure employees know that they're appreciated as a person first and foremost, because that's what makes up our business. It's people. And that is a really important thing not to be taken lightly.
Yeah, I would echo, Christine's viewpoints of it's all about our employees and how, everybody takes care of each other. I think we've done, I think the biggest learning for me is that, we're working from home. I've never worked from home in my career. And, I've got, unfortunately, a little bit too much gray hair to say that, but, that was an experience, for me as well as, lots of the other teammates. So from that perspective, learning how to work from home and learning how to collaborate, in a virtual manner. I never thought I would really appreciate Zoom as much as I have, but it's allowing for collaboration to occur. And I think realizing that people all take on these types of impacts to their lives differently. Everybody's got different home fronts, whether they got kids, whether they have, elderly parents, whether they've got siblings who have, or there's someone with, some conditions that may be compromised. Everybody is treating and handling the situation very differently. And I think it's coming down to, hey, when I call you, we have our one-on-ones, we have our group meetings. My first question is, how are you? Not just how are you, but why are you that way? Is it today a good day, today a bad day? Basically forcing people to take some time.
It's very humanizing, right? Like that's the one thing I'd say to this. It's, whether the dog's barking in the background, or the baby's crying, or technology's not working, it's okay to walk in a little bit less than polished. Like businesses expected us to be so crisp and polished. And I think it's really showing, for most of us, it's bringing out the human in us and that level of understanding and empathy, which I think is such a fantastic thing. Okay, great. Let's move on to predictions. So the first question around predictions is, if you had to predict something that you think most folks are not preparing for right now in this moment of time, but will come true in the future, short term or long term, what are they missing? Like what should they be thinking about?
Well, I'll go for it. I think, first of all, it's a good question, because I think we're spending a lot of time thinking about what next. And I do think, a lot of people are kind of on a, little bit of euphoria, thinking that the economy's turned around. The unemployment numbers weren't so bad last month, even though they missed by a few points. But, we got some stores are starting to open, people are getting out. I think my biggest concern, I think as a company, our concern is, what happens if the second shoe drops? What happens if there is a secondary downturn? What happens if we have another stay-at-home order? How do we prepare ourselves and our industry and our customers and our employees for that fact that this isn't going away tomorrow? COVID's now, there's no vaccine, so we're not going to go all of a sudden, there's no instant magic cure. Social unrest isn't going to change itself tomorrow. So how do we handle those things for long term? And is there another shoe that's going to drop? And let's be prepared today, so when it is, we're not surprised.
What would you predict?
I think I echo what Steve said on, not being able to plan long term because we're all so focused on the short term and getting through those milestones. Short term, there's so much uncertainty. It is really important to do some long-term thinking about business at this point and, revisit those 3-year plans, revisit those 2-year plans while still paying attention to the short term, but really having a healthy conversation on, the long-term trajectory of what you set out to do in probably 2019 as you embarked on planning. So, everyone needs to worry about the next 90 to 120 days, but what's going to suffer is that longer term outlook on business trajectory and more strategic things that can be put in place now, even though, we are in a big time of change, and what those things are.
I love that. That's great. And the last round of question will be around advice. So as folks are dialed in here today, and where we've either have had friction, or we've had wins, or where we've made mistakes, what advice would you give folks in a marketing or finance function today? Christine, let's start with you.
I think Steve brought it up earlier, but one of the things that we advocate is it's okay to fail. We celebrate failures. We typically start company meetings with failures, which some people, when they walk into that, they're kind of like, whoa. Celebrating failure? Yes, we celebrate failures, but fail fast, learn, and move on. That's not a new concept, but I think it's really hard to think that way and to think it's okay, especially in this time when so much is riding on it, right? You want to make the right decision. You get all the data together so you can make the best decision. You're never going to have enough data. You're never going to have, something that's going to give you, the tea leaves are never going to be perfect, but, make that decision, make it fast, pivot, get results, and then shift and redeploy. Don't give up.
I think the biggest, suggestion I would make is listen to your employees. One of the things that I think we really honed in on is everybody has a voice. And it's amazing the amount of intellect and the amount of understanding of the customers in the business if you start talking to your employees. All of us on the executive team spend a lot of time talking to our employees. We have all hands meetings where every employee in the company has the ability to ask the CEO or any executive any question they want, from a personal question to a business question to a theory question to any type. And it's a wide open forum, an anonymous forum. And I think it's tremendous. And I think, we've got these sessions where we've got the entire company to, whether it's in a group format or department format, really listen to your employees. They have a lot to say and a lot of value to add. That it should not be a top-down approach. It should be a bottom-up approach.
I love it. Well, I mean, it's clear to me you've created an focus and alignment through a people-driven, purpose-oriented company that is focused on doing the right thing, which I think is so needed in today's world, especially as we see some of the challenges we're facing from a socioeconomic perspective. I can only imagine how refreshing it is. Steve and Christine, this has been a true pleasure. I've enjoyed this conversation. I know folks who will be dialing in will enjoy it just as much. And I truly thank you for your time and insights and wisdom. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dad.